Flock plan to use Uber and Lyft cameras, the cameras in the actual cars. They wanted to add that to their network. Auto loans hit record high and US home sales decline again. This is the foundation current events for August 11th, 2026. I'm your host, Sot L, seeker of truth L, speaker of truth L. And we're just going to jump into it. Let's do the dance. Make sure to check out welcome to thefoundation.com. Sign up for the email list. We're going to be expanding the platform, expanding the channel, the brand, however, people talk about it these days, man. But, more topics, more topics. I've talked about trust for over 10 years. We steadily have people that are interested in trust, but we want to expand beyond trust, beyond LLCs, corporations, beyond business credit, things of that nature, into, I would say, real world actionable information with regards to privacy. The foundation is all about being private. So that's the dance we're doing. Make sure you sign up for the email list to stay up to date to the rejuvenation. I'll just say that rejuvenation of the foundation. Let's check out silver today. Silver, $64.67. It's on the move. The MACD is crazy. I mean, wow. We got some good trading volume. I think it's going to hit that. It's going to hit this. Now, will it break through or will it bounce back down? I don't know. It looks like it hit it once, was rejected. It may hit it again, get rejected. Generally, it's going to be 2 or 3 times of rejection before it, crosses over. But what do I know? I'm just some dude on the internet. Internationally, Shanghai spot price $72.71. Silver spot price for America, the Western countries, $64.67. Man, we got about little $8. It's the delta is being reduced. It was widening. It stayed the same. I see it reducing, getting closer and closer. Let's jump into it. Federal budget deficit on track to surpass $2 trillion this fiscal year as spending outpaces revenue. Ay, ay, ay. That's a lot of, that's a lot. That's a lot. So we have the CBO estimates the shortfall will reach $2.1 trillion for fiscal year 2026, driven by rising interest costs, Social Security, Medicare spending. I would say inflation of the currency as well. But what do I know? I'm just a dude on YouTube. We've got the Palantirs. Shyam Sankar says every day we're making progress as AI supercharges American workers. I don't know if it's supercharging American workers. I know it's getting a lot of American workers laid off. It may be supercharging some American workers. Palantir CTO said he's seen significant progress since his Fox News op-ed imploring America to take advantage of both AI and the American worker while sharing some observations on China's use of AI. Quote, China treats AI as industrial policy. Our labs treat it as theology, a race to birth a machine god. Beijing's play commoditize the complement. All that Frontier Lab, wow, market cap gets transmuted into demand signal to scale the stack below the models, power chips, minerals, etc. Americans can and must win the full stack. He's basically saying you got to win the race against China's. Yet Sankar acknowledged that even if America is not thinking about how to scale AI in all these other industries like China, it will happen naturally in the U.S. as the technology develops. Quote, the only threat to AI generating prosperity for America is suicide and homicide, end quote. Yeah, okay. Wow. That's a very strong statement that likely doesn't have any substantiation. Quote, I'm not really worried about what is China going to do per se. I'm more worried about bans on data centers and kind of unfettered and unwarranted fears curtailing our ability to actually generate wage growth for the American worker, end quote. Why? Why would we believe that when we see tens of thousands of Americans lose their jobs every month while these companies prioritize AI. Quote, and so I think really having a strong narrative that is told not by any companies, but actually by the people themselves is important for us to get excited and motivated and get lined up behind the opportunity. So he wants narratives, social engineering. I completely believe this entire thing being set up with these data centers and all this stuff, Palantir, all of it is AI, Meta AI, all of it is a dystopian cage for the average American. But that's just me. That's my opinion. As I said, I'm a dude on the internet. Most Americans are keeping up with their debt, but people struggling are falling further behind. Americans, by and large, are not letting their debt get too unwieldy. In spite of persistently high inflation and choppy economic developments, new data from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York showed today. However, this is not a one size fits all economy, and the latest data shows growing fractures. More U.S. households are having trouble keeping up with their mortgage payments and other debt. More people went at least 30 days late on their mortgage payments in the second quarter of this year than at any quarter since 2015. It looked weird to me. According to the New York's Fed quoted report on household debt and credit, a greater share of loans also went into serious delinquency or 90 days late or more on their car payments during the same time period than at any quarter since 2010. Mm. Still, while those delinquency rates remain elevated from where they were pre-pandemic, they're holding fairly stable and not deteriorating to the rates seen during the great financial crisis. It was 2008. So, I mean, I guess if that's your barometer, if that's your gauge, that was pretty bad. Quote, you really do have a lot of people who are doing just fine and spending because they feel good and they're secure in their jobs. End quote. This is Matt Scholes, consumer finance analyst for LendingTree, who went on to say, quote, but then you have an awful lot of people who are really struggling and really nervous because of high prices and a challenging job market, end quote. Overall, U.S. household debt balances edged down by 13 billion or 0.1% to 18.8 trillion during the second quarter. However, the decline is largely an artifact of a quirk in how mortgage loans were recorded during the quarter. Researchers noted mortgage loan balances 74 billion decline during the quarter was attributed to a quote service transfer gap end quote of delayed credit reporting when a mortgage is transferred from one servicer to another. This is likely to be reversed next quarter. Okay, so they got explanations. I was going to report on the McDonald's. I'll just tell y'all, their sales are down, and their explanation for the drop in their sales is them saying, well, we offer too many drinks, we change too much stuff on the menu, we confuse customers. I don't think that's the deal. I just think people can't afford these value meals because they're not value meals anymore. Like one of those meals is $14, $12 or something like that if you're lucky. And B, people are figuring out that stuff is not good for you. Ford's new electric pickup will cost $28,350. It's an extremely expensive bet on a very cheap truck. I don't know. I remember when that Tesla Model 3 was announced and they said it was going to be 30,000 and it dropped and it was not 30,000. Ford is the undisputed global leader in pickup trucks. The F-Series is the best-selling vehicle in the U.S. of any kind since 1981. Its latest pickup, the Ford Fathom, will cost a downright cheap $28,350, which should set it up to be a massive seller. And it absolutely needs to be. Ford has spent billions beyond the usual cost developing the Phantom, a smaller electric pickup truck that goes on sale in 2027. But there is no current U.S. market segment along the lines of electric pickup smaller than a regular truck, but still with room for a family of 5. If it bombs, it's not just money down the drain. The truck becomes a cautionary tale. Quote, despite the small footprint of the vehicle, the implications are huge. End quote. This is Ivan Drury, Director of Consumer Insights for Edmunds, coming out with any new car can typically cost a major company around $2 billion. But the research and development to bring such an inexpensive EV to the market has taken much more than that. The Fathom and the cars descended from it has already cost Ford around $5 billion. Then there's a low price, unlike luxury cars, which can be sold for multiple thousands of dollars more than they cost to be assembled. Cheap cars excuse me, sell at extraordinarily high volumes to make the same amount of money. That is enough pressure to put on one little pickup truck. Now, add in the fact that it's all electric in a segment that simply does not exist in the United States. Quote, it's a big bet for Ford for sure. End quote. This is Emma Berg. What do you think? It's going to be a really small Ford pickup. I think, what was it? The Toyota, no, the Tundra's the big one. I can't remember. But they have smaller pickups. It's going to be very small. It's going to be I don't know. I don't know what people think. This is America. People want, large stuff. The big stuff. Nvidia partners with Wall Street giants to raise 500 billion for an AI build out. Nvidia said yesterday it has partnered with 6 major financial institutions to launch compute financing platforms aimed at raising over $500 billion in third-party capital for AI infrastructure. The move highlights how surging demand for AI computing capacity is drawing institutional investors as governments, companies, and startups race to build out data centers to support AI workloads. Big tech companies have signaled that spending on AI would not slow down, with combined outlays to surpass $730 billion this year. NVIDIA signed memorandums of understanding with Apollo, BlackRock, Blackstone, Brookfield, Goldman Sachs, and KKR for the financing platforms. The initiative is intended to broaden access to NVIDIA-based infrastructure among frontier AI developers, enterprises, governments, and cloud providers, while creating longer duration, usage-linked investment opportunities for large asset managers and private capital firms. Quote, these financing platforms will help customers access scarce compute at scale and build out the AI factories that will power every industry and country in the AI age. End quote. It sounds like it's going to get pretty expensive. This robot dog does not make me feel good. Don't like it. Don't like it. They try to make it wave. But it sounds like compute's going to be very expensive. You got private financial investors and investor firms and capital investors and stuff getting into these data centers. They're going to want the return on their investment. If you don't think so, I don't know. Auto loans hit record high and some other consumer debt rising, New York Fed says. Record high. So that $30,000 truck is, I don't know. U.S. consumers took out a record amount in auto loans in the second quarter and boosted their credit card and home equity balances as well. The New York Fed said in its latest household debt and credit report today, though overall consumer debt fell slightly to 18.8 trillion in the April-June period. The decline was linked to a change in how mortgage data is reported, with the decline in mortgage debt in the second quarter expected to be offset by a similar jump in the next report. So, they charge off. If you can't pay the stuff and they charge it off, technically you don't owe it anymore. So, just because consumer debt appears to be dropping, those could be charge offs. The $19 billion rise in home equity loans is part of a now 4-year trend that Fed researchers see as part of a substitution among older homeowners who want to avoid the current high mortgage rates that would be associated with a full refinancing. I think that's part of it. The $211 billion in auto loan originations was a record, but only in nominal, not inflation adjusted terms. A surge of auto purchases during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2021 also led to quarterly auto borrowing of around $200 billion, but also pushed up prices. The overall delinquency rate fell in the second quarter, in a sign that household balance sheets had, on average, remained resilient despite a decline in inflation-adjusted incomes. And then, a quarter is 3 months. It's 3 months. So generally, credit cards, auto loans, if you're 3 payments behind, they repo the joint, and then they charge it off. Credit cards too. Generally, I don't know. Some credit card companies are different, but this is the research that I've done. So I don't know, delinquency rate falling. If you no longer have that financing available to you, they're not reporting payments or non-payments. In a blog post accompanying the New York Fed's report, staff economists said credit card delinquency rates in particular, while still elevated compared to the period before the pandemic, appear to have stabilized. An increase in the share of credit card debt more than 90 days past due from 7.6% in late 2022 to 12.8% at the start of this year prompted concerns about deteriorating household finances, but a closer look at the data, the researcher says, shows the pace at which households were falling behind has been unchanged for around 2 years. The rise in overall share of delinquent credit card debt they found was because lenders were keeping, quote, stale, charged off debts, end quote, on their books for longer rather than because of, quote, a fundamental worsening in the incidence of delinquency, end quote. Quote, when the question is how are households doing right now, the pace of credit card delinquency is elevated but has been largely stable since 2024, end quote, with about 7% of balances flowing into the delinquency from one quarter to the next. The researchers concluded overall delinquency on all forms of credit fell slightly in the quarter to 4.7% of outstanding balances versus 4.8%. I don't know. I think the charge-off dance is, I think that's a good point to be thinking about. Think about that. U.S. existing home sales post second straight monthly decline in July. People aren't selling. People can't afford to buy. U.S. existing home sales fell for a second straight month in July, and a rebound is likely to be limited by higher mortgage rates and tight supply. Home sales dropped 1.7% last month to a seasonally adjusted, so they adjusted it, annual rate of 4.06 million units. The National Association of Realtors said today economists polled by Reuters had forecast home resales slipping to a rate of 4.05 million units. So yeah, they were really close. Existing home sales are counted at the closing of a contract. Last month's sales likely reflect a contract signed in May and June when mortgage rates resumed their upward trend after briefly pulling back amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The average rate on the popular 30-year fixed rate mortgage has jumped 71 basis points since the war started in February. Data from the mortgage financing firm Freddie Mac showed it averaged 6.69% last week, the highest level since 2025 of July. Higher mortgage rates are also discouraging some homeowners from selling, worsening the housing shortage. Many homeowners have mortgages with fixed rates below 5%. Yep. Yeah, I think in 2015 you can get a mortgage rate for like 3.5%, 3.4%. I remember. Home sales fell in the Midwest and South. They rose in the Northeast and were unchanged in the West. Sales increased 0.7% on a year-over-year basis in July. Is that adjusted? I don't know. Quote, there's no doubt that the housing market would be thriving if average mortgage rates were to return near 6%. End quote. This is Lawrence Yun, the NAR's chief economist. What's going on with the housing market, y'all? U.S. court rules Meta and other tech firms must face thousands of lawsuits over social media addiction. We may see a change in the predatory nature of social media. We may see a change in doom scrolling. I don't know. When it hits companies' pockets, generally there's going to be some change. Will it hit their pockets? We don't know. But a U.S. appeals court yesterday allowed thousands of lawsuits to move forward against Meta platforms, Alphabet's platforms, Google, ByteDance, TikToks, and Snap's platforms over claims they designed their products to be addictive to young users. The San Francisco-based Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals rejected an appeal by Meta and TikTok seeking to overturn a lower court ruling requiring them to face more than 3,000 lawsuits filed in federal court, saying the companies had appealed too early. So they'll just appeal again. The companies had argued that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, which generally shields online companies from claims over content posted by their users, also bars lawsuits claiming they failed to warn the public about the addictive nature of their platform. Oh, it's the users that made it addictive. Most appeals come after a case has concluded with a ruling or a verdict. The companies contended that they should not have to wait until the litigation ends to challenge the lower court's rejection of their immunity to defense. But the Ninth Circuit said Section 230 provides a defense to liability, not immunity. from lawsuits, so the appeal was premature. So, you can lose a lawsuit, but you may not be liable. Don't know. Meta loses bid to delay multi-state trial. The court also denied Meta's bid to postpone trial beginning tomorrow in a lawsuit brought by 29 state attorneys general alleging that the company illegally collected and used children's data, designed its social media platforms to keep young users hooked, and misled consumers about their safety. The company had argued that the trial couldn't go forward while the appeal had been outstanding. The news comes days after a New Mexico judge found Meta had created a public nuisance in the state and ordered it to pay $567 million into a teen mental health fund and implement youth safety measures. Representatives for TikTok did not immediately respond to requests, blah, blah. Lexi Hazam and Previn Warren, attorneys representing thousands of school districts and individuals suing Meta and other companies in the litigation over the claims in federal court, said in a statement the ruling would allow the state's trial to move forward, as well as a trial over claims brought by school districts scheduled for February. The school districts are getting in on it. Oh, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Check this out. Fauci privately flagged miscarriage risk before telling pregnant women there were no red flags. Did you guys hear about this? I did not take the shot. I do not call foul on anyone who did. I'm not one of those people who are fear mongering and stuff. I do pay attention to what's going on medically with most people who have taken those shots, but that was a coordinated worldwide campaign, a fear marketing campaign. What was known as the pandemic. That was everyone. Oh man, there was so much fear, so many threats of what was going to happen if you didn't do. But hey, man, anyways, newly disclosed text messages show Dr. Anthony Fauci privately entertained the possibility that the COVID-19 vaccine could trigger first trimester miscarriages, months before he told the public there was no risk. The messages come from a trove that Senator Rand Paul and Senator Ron Johnson released, containing more than 34,000 texts and 522 voicemails the Senate Homeland Security Committee pulled from Fauci's government-issued phone. Among the trove is the January 21st text chain between Fauci, Dr. Vivek Murthy, and Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who went on to serve as the Biden administration's Surgeon General and CDC director, in which the three officials worked through how the vaccine's risk might interact with pregnancy. On January 25th, Murthy opened the thread with a question for pregnant women. Quote, for pregnant women considering getting the vaccine, are you aware of any data or theoretical reason why vaccinating early versus late in pregnancy would be preferred? And any sense of when there will be more robust data on vaccine risk in pregnant women? End quote. Walensky noted that more than 15,000 pregnant women had already enrolled in the CDC's V-Safe vaccine safety monitoring system. Fauci wrote that, quote, there are no data or theoretical reason to believe that vaccinating early versus later in pregnant women would be preferred. He also flagged a caveat that would later look prescient. Quote, yet some people, even female healthcare professionals, feel concerned about injecting a genetic vaccine very early in pregnancy, end quote, he wrote. Nearly 2 hours passed before Fauci circled back with something he had not mentioned the first time. Quote, I asked around a bit more and another issue came up that you need to be aware of. Since many people have significant cytokines, I'm gonna go with that, storm and fever after the second dose, this theoretically could be associated with miscarriage in the first trimester. Ooh. Walensky's response left little doubt the group treated the concern as legitimate. Fauci's point about the first trimester was, quote, definitely a good point, especially after dose 2, end quote, she wrote back. None of that made it into Fauci's public messaging. On February 3rd, 2021, during a Journal of American Medical Association question and answer live stream, he told viewers the FDA had, quote, found thus far, and we have to be careful, but thus far, no red flags about pregnant women, end quote. Months later, while serving as the Biden White House chief medical advisor. He went further, telling the public that tens of thousands of pregnant women tracked by the CDC after vaccination showed, quote, no indication whatsoever, end quote, of increased adverse issues compared with unvaccinated pregnant women. Quote, it's pretty clear that pregnant women should get vaccinated, end quote, he said. The text also showed the three officials weighing vaccine risk against the risks of the virus itself while worrying about how competing health authorities were muddying their message. On January 26, 2021, Murthy told Fauci and Walensky he was, quote, surprised to see WHO put out a strong statement saying they do not recommend Moderna in pregnant women, end quote, calling it, quote, a strong statement to make and potentially quite damaging to public confidence among pregnant women, end quote. Public confidence kept surfacing as the metric that mattered most to the group, even as the underlying science remained unsettled in their own private assessment. So they were worried about the look of it, the optics versus the function. And last, Flock planned to turn 350,000 Uber and Lyft cars into rolling surveillance cameras. Flock safety systems have been making news recently as incidents of vandalism targeting their cameras get reported across various U.S. states where they are deployed. This time, though, Flock's plan to expand its network to vehicles has been uncovered. Because its cameras remain fixed to poles and are therefore stationary, their usefulness as evidence in a given case may be limited. A camera can capture a vehicle's color, model, and license plate, but only at that specific location. To track where a vehicle travels, Flock would need mobile ALPR coverage. Automatic license plates reader. I think that's what it stands for. That's why it planned to partner with Nexar, a dash cam company, with a proposal that could have expanded its network to around 350,000 Uber, Lyft, and other delivery service vehicles. Man, what? Drivers using Nexar dash cams could effectively turn their vehicles into mobile surveillance platforms, allowing Flock to collect license plate data across a much wider area. 404 Media. Wow, I can't speak today. 404 Media reported on Flock's strategy, which was to use the dash cams on Uber, Lyft, and other delivery drivers' vehicles as mobile license plate readers. That means the dash cams would potentially scan license plates that appeared in the frame wherever the rideshare vehicle traveled. Flock shared details of the plan with the media outlet in a document that revealed its intention to partner with Nexar. The document also highlighted how Flock was using the proposed partnership as a pitch to its own potential customers, despite Flock confirming to 404 Media that the partnership with Nexar never went through. In a presentation to the Georgia office of the Attorney General last August, Flock mentioned Nexar. It stated, quote, hundreds of commercial businesses and HOAs in Georgia are part of the network. Plus, Nexar partnership, which includes 350,000 Uber, Lyft, and other delivery service devices, end quote. Although the plan never materialized, the document still exposed Flock's plan to use existing cars on the road as surveillance devices and collect the data for its network. It is not known whether Uber or Lyft drivers would have been aware if Flock used data from their cameras in their vehicles. No, they wouldn't have been aware. I'm just going to tell you right now. Mobile automatic license plate readers are not new. While Flock intended to expand its surveillance web through hundreds of thousands of rideshare and delivery vehicles, mobile license plate readers have been here for some time. Another company, Axon, also supplies ALPR cameras to law enforcement agencies for use in police vehicles. Yes, they've been doing that. They've been doing that. I don't know how you feel about that. I personally am appreciative that this deal didn't go through, but I'm a little skeptical as to whether that news was true. But, stay aware, pay attention, y'all. And that's it with current events. Y'all enjoy yourself, take care of yourself. Make sure you say 10 thankful things that you're, 10 things you're thankful for before you go to sleep tonight and every night is very important. And I'll catch y'all tomorrow on the Foundation episode. Sorry for the mistakes. Peace, y'all.